Only a fool would risk making Kim Jong-Un mad, and it looks like Putin just did. Rumors are swirling that Russian forces are using North Korean soldiers as cannon fodder, pushing them to the front lines with barely a plan, let alone weapons. These troops, supposedly assured they'd be safe in defensive positions, are instead getting thrown into battles as disposable manpower against Ukrainian artillery and drones. If true, it's a ruthless move that could lead to serious backlash from Kim Jong-un himself. What happens when one of the world's most unpredictable leaders discovers his soldiers are being sacrificed in Russian conflicts? Today we're diving into the explosive consequences of North Korean soldiers fighting and dying in Russia, and what it means for Putin's risky new alliance. But first, it's worth noting that while the issue of North Korean troops in Russia and/or Ukraine is considered a reality by Ukrainian and Western media, North Korea has danced around the claim that there are North Korean troops in Russia. On October 25th, DPRK Vice Foreign Minister in charge of Russian affairs, Kim Jong-Un, said, "If there is such a thing that the world media is talking about, I think it will be an act conforming with the regulations of international law." What Kim is referring to, of course, is a comprehensive strategic partnership agreement between the DPRK and Russian Federation that was agreed between Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un during Putin's visit to Pyongyang in June. This agreement has now completed its journey through the Russian government. After passing the lower house on October 24th, a day before Kim's comments, it quickly received approval from the upper house, the Federation Council, and has now been signed into effect by Putin, making it official. But here's the kicker. Buried in Article 4 is a clause that takes this alliance to a whole new level. The agreement's Article 4 is essentially a mutual defense pact, much like NATO's Article 5, which compels both parties to come to each other's aid militarily in the case of an invasion. Ukraine's invasion of the Kursk region fits that bill, meaning that in terms of the agreement, North Korean troops not only have a right to be in Kursk, but an obligation. A day after Kim's statement, at an informal UN Security Council meeting in New York City, Kim Ha-il, the first secretary of North Korea's permanent mission to the UN, said, "With regard to the accusations against the DPRK, they are nothing but dirty maneuvers of the US and its followers to disguise their crimes, to instigate the protraction of the Ukraine crisis by supplying Ukraine with all kinds of lethal weapons prohibited by international law, including cluster bombs." And that's about as much as the North Koreans have had to say on the matter officially. The Russians, for their part, have neither confirmed nor denied the stories either. In a bit of dark trolling, on October 21st, a group of Russian Armed Forces soldiers raised the North Korean flag from their dugout in the Pokrovsk direction, causing a huge stir in Ukrainian Telegram channels like Unayan. The head of the Ukraine Center for Countering Disinformation, Andriy Kovalenko, had to quickly step in to shut down the rumor, urging people not to fall for what he called Russian psychological operations. Russian President Vladimir Putin took a similar tone at the press conference after the BRICS summit in Kazan on October 24th. Replying to a US journalist's question about alleged satellite images of DPRK troops, he said, "Satellite images, well, that's something serious. If there are images, then they are a reflection of something." He then remarked, "We ratified our Treaty on Strategic Partnership, which contains Article 4, and we have never doubted the fact that North Korean leadership is very serious about commitments to us. But as for what and how we do, it's for us to decide after holding talks with North Korea." On October 31st, Vasily Nebenzia, Russia's permanent representative at the UN Security Council, was even more blunt. "Even if we imagine that everything our Western colleagues claim about military cooperation between Russia and the DPRK suddenly turns out to be true, why are the United States and its allies trying to impose on the whole world the rotten logic that they have the right to help the Zelensky regime, mobilizing all their military and intelligence potential for this, while Russia's allies do not have the right to do this?" So neither Russia nor North Korea are holding their cards close to their chest. Both claim there's no hard evidence of actual North Koreans in battle, so they can afford to carry on in the same way. Basically, their counter-argument to the idea of North Koreans actually fighting in Kursk or Ukraine falls into the category of, "Trust me, I'm from the government." But what about that video? Based on satellite imagery provided by South Korea and geolocated videos on Kyiv Post, it seems certain that a significant number of North Korean troops are indeed on Russian soil. On October 18th, 2 videos emerged allegedly showing Korean soldiers in Russia speaking Korean, with an accent atypical in the south, according to the Kyiv Post. The videos show Koreans in training exercises and collecting equipment, clad in Russian military uniforms. The Kyiv Post also cited Ukraine's Center for Strategic Communication and Information Security's claim that the second video was taken at a training ground in the town of Sergeyevka in Russia's Primorsky Krai. They added that they had established through geolocation that the first video was also taken at the same facility. Those videos seemed to corroborate the evidence presented the day before by Seoul's National Intelligence Service, or NIS. They showed a series of satellite images of a concentration of troops deployed to Russia. These consisted of 1,500 North Korean special forces from the areas near Chongjin, Hamhung, and Musudan, who had been transported by 4 landing ships and 3 escort ships belonging to the Russian Pacific Fleet between October 8th and October 13th, marking the first time that the Russian Navy has entered North Korean waters since 1990. The agency said the North Korean troops were dispersed in multiple bases in Russia's Far East, including Vladivostok, Ussurisk, Khabarovsk, and Blagoveshchensk, and claimed that they were issued fake ID cards of residents of the Yakutia and Buryatia regions of Siberia, on top of Russian uniforms and weapons in a bid to conceal their identity. The report also stated that the troops were expected to be deployed on the front lines as soon as they complete their adaptation training. The same report stated that in early August, the presence of Kim Jong-sik, Pyongyang's first vice director of the munitions industry department and a key figure in the country's missile development, had been discovered. He had been visiting a North Korean KN-23 missile launch site near the Russian-Ukrainian front several times, accompanied by dozens of North Korean military officers. That correlates with an October 10th story in The Guardian, which cited unnamed Ukrainian sources that there were dozens of North Koreans behind Russian lines, in teams that provided support for the launcher systems for KN-23 missiles. The article also reported that the Ukrainian military had said that they had destroyed North Korean ammunition in a strike on a depot in the Bryansk region, 75 miles from the Ukrainian border. That incident came after a Kyiv Post report that more than 20 soldiers were killed in an October 3rd Ukrainian missile strike on Russian-occupied territory near Donetsk. The death toll reportedly included 6 officers from North Korea who came to confer with their Russian counterparts, according to intelligence sources. 3 more North Korean servicemen were wounded, the sources said. More recently, on October 24th, the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine reported that the first North Korean soldiers arrived in the Kursk region. One day earlier, US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said, "We're seeing evidence that North Korean troops have gone to Russia. What exactly they're doing is left to be seen." Then on October 26th, Spanish newspaper El Pas reported that Ukrainian forces had already targeted buildings in the Russian region of Kursk, where North Korean troops are believed to be stationed. They cited yet another source, in this case a member of the Ukrainian State Border Guard. On October 28th, Andriy Yermak, a top aide to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, declared, "We are at war with North Korea." Mark Rutte, NATO Secretary General, seemed to agree. "Today I can confirm that North Korean troops have been sent to Russia and that North Korean military units have been deployed to the Kursk region," he said, adding that it showed Putin's growing desperation. He is unable to sustain his assault in Ukraine without foreign support. That's because the Ukrainians are fighting back with courage, resilience, and ingenuity. Then on November 1st, Zelensky claimed that the Russians themselves had confirmed DPRK troops in Kursk. "We have clear information," he said. "This is information that I received recently. Russia discussed this issue with the West and confirmed, yes, there are North Korean troops. They will fight in Ukraine." His assertions were supported by a Korea Herald report that Russia had promised North Korea approximately 700,000 tons of rice a year and $2,000 in payments to each soldier in exchange for support in the war against Ukraine. The deal was sweetened with Russia promising to send North Korea space technology and possible military assistance in the event of a conflict on the Korean peninsula. Despite all the claims and counterclaims, no actual verifiable evidence of North Korean troops in Ukraine has been provided. Despite dozens of videos emerging daily documenting the brutal hell that is the battle for the Ukrainian-Russian front line, the only video footage that has emerged from either side that suggests the presence of North Koreans, dead or alive, is of the supposed wounded North Korean soldier. Granted, there are also 2 recordings, allegedly intercepted calls between servicemen in Russia's 810th Separate Marine Brigade from October 26th and 27th. According to the Ukrainian Main Directorate of Intelligence, or HUR, these calls prove the presence of North Korean troops in the Kursk region, and that the Russians are not exactly thrilled about it, as they voice numerous concerns. The soldiers talk about not knowing what to do with the Chinese who are arriving and complain about a lack of translators, among other things. Whether the intercepted calls are legitimate or not, they don't really qualify as concrete evidence that North Koreans are fighting in Ukraine. So what does it all mean? In answer to the question, are North Koreans fighting in Kursk or on the front line, none of the pieces of evidence individually are strong enough to be considered a smoking gun, particularly considering the sophistication and skill of the Kyiv War Information Team. But if you add them all up, it looks like too much smoke for there not to be at least one shot fired. Bottom line, North Korean soldiers are most likely on the ground in Ukraine, and what they were told they'd be doing there remains an open question. The same question we posed at the beginning of the video: are North Korean soldiers being used as cannon fodder? Would anyone really be that shocked to learn that Putin and Kim had actually agreed to the use of North Korean troops in such a manner? Kim certainly has a few soldiers spare. Not only does the North Korean military have an estimated 1.3 million active duty personnel, but as a result of a recent recruitment drive, the national press agency KCNA reported as many as 1.4 million queuing up to become new conscripts. Because their training is questionable and their combat experience negligible, perhaps they know they're intentionally being fed into the meat grinder. But why would someone agree to that? Well, there are many factors that could influence such a decision. The $2,000 per soldier we mentioned might well be worth it for an impoverished man if it were guaranteed to be given to his family. Or maybe North Korea was being lied to from the start. Would Putin be so bold as to lie to Kim and merely use his troops as cannon fodder, as the video of the alleged North Korean portrays? There seems to be very little incentive for this ruse. Why would Putin risk jeopardizing the reported supply chain, providing nearly half of the 3 million artillery shells his forces use each year, a resource his war effort so desperately needs? Why risk angering Kim and seeing him possibly invade and seize Vladivostok, which is a lot closer to Pyongyang than Moscow, a move that would cripple Russia's trade with China? Or why make Kim see red so much that he launches his nukes toward Moscow? For now, we can only wait to see when, where, and if the North Koreans turn up in Ukraine, and how it changes the dynamics of the war. But what do you think? Are the North Koreans already in Kursk? And if so, are they being used as cannon fodder or for something else? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you as always for watching. Now go and check out Will NATO Enter Ukraine now that North Korea fights for Russia? Or click this other video instead.